The sun was setting behind the red cliffs of planet Dorlax. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of burning minerals and alien grass. Jake Mercer, a human explorer from Earth, wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked around the open canyon. His mission was to map this uncharted region, take samples, and avoid trouble. But trouble had just arrived, and it was 30 feet tall and very angry looking. She walked through the canyon like thunder in motion. Each step shook the ground beneath Jake's boots. She wasn't just tall, she was massive. Her body built like a mountain of muscle wrapped in tribal armor made of stone and bone. Her dark violet skin shimmered under the dying sun, and her long silver hair flowed behind her like a flag of war. The locals called her Varka, the Giantess of the East, and they warned every traveler, do not speak to her unless you are ready to pay the price. Jake hadn't meant to meet her. He was just collecting crystal samples from a rock wall when she appeared. He turned slowly, afraid to move too fast, but instead of crushing him, she simply stared down at him with glowing golden eyes. Jake's heart thumped in his chest, like a trapped animal. His instincts screamed, "Run!" But something in her gaze froze him in place, and before he even realized what he was doing, the words slipped out of his mouth. "You're really strong," he said politely, his voice barely above a whisper. He had meant it as a simple compliment, like you might give someone at the gym. But the moment he said it, the air around them changed. The Giantess tilted her head slowly. Her eyes narrowed, then her lips curved into a strange, knowing smile. "You honor me with your words, small one," she said in a deep, rumbling voice. Jake blinked, surprised that she even spoke his language. Before he could say anything else, she lowered her massive hand and pointed one giant finger toward him. "You have made the ancient vow," she declared. Jake took a step back. "Wait, what? No, I was just—" "You gave the compliment of union," she interrupted. "You must now do your duty." Jake's stomach twisted. He didn't know what duty meant on this planet, but from her serious expression and the silence in the canyon, he could tell it wasn't something small. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Jake said nervously, trying to smile. "I was just being polite." Varka's smile faded. "To compliment a warrior of my kind is to bind yourself to her," she said. "You are now mine." Jake opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again. The words weren't coming. He was stuck between disbelief and panic. Was this some sort of prank? Some alien custom gone wrong? But the look in her eyes told him this was no joke. "I really didn't mean it like that," Jake said, backing away slowly. But the Giantess took a step forward, her shadow falling over him like a curtain. "The canyon has heard your words," she said. "The earth remembers." Jake looked up at her, speechless. The canyon had gone silent. Not a single bird-like creature chirped. Not a single wind whispered. Even the rocks seemed to be watching. Before he could run or argue, the Giantess reached down and gently picked him up with one hand. He yelped in surprise, but she was strangely careful, holding him like a rare object. "Not a prisoner. You will come with me," she said. "The tribe will decide your fate." "Wait, tribe?" Jake asked, his voice squeaking. She said nothing more. With him in her grip, she turned and began walking back through the canyon, her long legs covering miles with each step. Jake stared down at the giant hand wrapped around him and sighed. All this because of one simple compliment, he muttered to himself. "Next time, I'm just going to nod and smile." But deep inside, something else stirred. A curiosity, a strange feeling that this moment, this mistake, was the beginning of something far bigger than he had ever expected. Something that would change not just his mission, but his entire life. The sky grew darker as Varka, the Giantess, carried Jake deeper into the mountains. Huge glowing insects buzzed in the air, lighting the rocky paths with their soft blue light. Jake stayed quiet in her hand, his heart pounding and thoughts spinning. He wasn't sure if he was being kidnapped, honored, or dragged into some alien game he didn't understand. Below them, strange carvings appeared in the stone, ancient symbols, Huge spiral markings and statues of giant warriors holding curved blades. Varka stopped in front of a towering stone gate, half buried in the side of the mountain. She knocked once with her fist. The sound echoed like thunder, shaking dust from the cliffs. A few seconds later, the gates groaned and opened. Jake's eyes widened. Behind the wall stood an entire village made of stone towers and bridges built into the cliffs. Giant bonfires burned in deep pits, lighting up the place like a festival. But there was no joy in the air, only silence, tension, and dozens of giant eyes staring down at him. Giant women stood on ledges and balconies, some holding spears, others with braided hair and armored shoulders. Jake swallowed hard as Varka raised him up for all to see. "I bring the one who made the vow," she called out, her voice echoing through the valley. The giants began to murmur, their low voices. Rolling like wind over the rocks, a much older giantess covered in tattoos and furs stepped forward with a staff. Her eyes were sharp, glowing green like emeralds. "You dare bring him here, Varka," she said. "You are young but not foolish." He gave the compliment of strength. Varka replied proudly, "He is bound to the right." Jake raised both hands, his voice shaking. "Okay, I think I need to explain something. This is all. A big misunderstanding." The elder ignored him and pointed her staff. "Silence, small one," she said. "The law is older than memory. The right is clear." Jake looked up helplessly. "What even is this right you all keep talking about?" Varka lowered him gently onto a flat stone platform in the center of the village. The elder approached him, towering like a tree over a pebble. "To speak words of strength to a giantess is to challenge fate," she said. "It means you recognize her as your equal, your partner." Jake blinked. "Partner? Like teammate?" The elder narrowed her eyes. "Like life mate." Jake's jaw dropped. "What?" Gasps and laughter spread among the giants watching from above. To them, it was obvious. The small human had no idea what he had just done. Some were amused, others looked angry, and a few looked curious. "I didn't mean it like that," Jake said quickly. "I was just being nice, polite." "You were being true," Varka replied, stepping beside him. "No one compliments a giantess unless he means it." Jake stared at her in disbelief. "On Earth we say stuff like that all the time." The elder frowned. "You are not on Earth." A horn blew from the tower above. The elder raised her staff. "The rite of proving will begin at dawn." "What's the rite of proving?" Jake asked, but no one answered. Varka looked down at him, her eyes softer now. "It is the test that decides if you are worthy to remain by my side." Jake felt his legs weaken. "And if I fail?" The elder turned and said calmly, "You will be crushed." The crowd roared, some in support, others in excitement. Jake stumbled back, falling onto the stone platform, his voice cracked. "I was just doing a job. I didn't come here to die." Varka crouched beside him. "Then, Lev, prove them wrong. Show them that small does not mean weak." She stood tall again and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Guards remained behind, watching Jake closely, their spears taller than trees. He sat alone on the cold stone, surrounded by silence and glowing eyes. His thoughts raced. This was insane. He didn't sign up to be someone's husband, or sacrifice, or anything close to this, but something about Varka's words stuck in his mind. Show them that small does not mean weak. A challenge, a dare. Jake looked around, then at the stars above. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this. He had one night to think, to plan, to understand the rules of a world where a simple compliment could seal your fate. Tomorrow, he would face the rite of proving. And somehow, he had to win. The sun rose slowly over the giant village, bathing the stone cliffs in gold. Jake sat on the cold stone platform, his eyes heavy from a sleepless night. He had paced, planned, and panicked until the stars faded. Now it was time. Drums began to beat, slow and deep, shaking the ground like a warning. Dozens of giantesses gathered on the surrounding ledges, watching silently. Some carried weapons, others wore armor made from thick bones and iron-like scales. They looked like warriors. From myths fierce and ancient, Varka stepped forward, standing tall and proud. Her silver hair was braided with dark cords, her shoulders wrapped in the fur of a massive beast. She didn't smile, but her eyes locked on Jake's with something between hope and challenge. He nodded once, trying not to show how scared he really was. The elder giantess from before raised her staff. "The rite of proving begins," she said. "Let the human face the task of strength." A loud creaking sound echoed through the canyon from behind a stone gate. Something massive began to roll forward. Jake squinted and his stomach dropped. It was a boulder, twice the height of a truck, thick and rough. Two giant warriors pushed it into the center of the clearing, then stepped back, leaving Jake alone before it. "You must move this sacred stone," the elder said. "Push it from here to the edge of the fire ring." Jake looked around and saw the ring, about 50 meters away, surrounded by giant torches. "And if I can't?" he asked, voice trembling. "Then you are not worthy," she replied, "and not welcome in our tribe." Jake stepped closer to the boulder, his palms sweating. He placed both hands on its cold surface, pushed, and nothing. The stone didn't even twitch. The crowd watched in silence, some already shaking their heads. He gritted his teeth and tried again, using his legs, leaning with all his body weight. Still nothing. Jake stepped back, breathing hard. He wasn't a soldier, not a bodybuilder, just an explorer with average strength. This was impossible, but then he stopped. He wasn't a giant, but he was human, and humans were clever. He scanned the area quickly, then noticed something. Near the wall were wooden logs, thick and round, maybe used for moving supplies. He ran toward them, dragging 3 logs back with great effort. The giants murmured, confused by his actions. Some even laughed. Jake ignored them, placing the logs under the boulder. Then he used a long stick to wedge the edge of the rock up slightly. Once he got the first log under, he carefully aligned the others. Finally, he pushed, not with brute strength, but with leverage and rolling movement. The boulder shifted slowly, inch by inch. It began to roll over the logs. Jake ran forward, pulling the first log from the back and placing it in front, creating a cycle. Gasps came from the ledges. The giants leaned forward, eyes wide. He was doing it, not with raw power, but with a plan, with strategy. The stone reached halfway, then 3/4. Jake's muscles screamed in pain, his arms trembling, sweat soaking his shirt. But he didn't stop. Varka watched from the side, her expression unreadable. The elder frowned but said nothing. Finally, with one last push, the stone crossed the fire ring. Jake fell to his knees, breathing like he'd run a marathon, but he smiled. He did it. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then a roar of voices broke out. Some cheered, some argued, some looked shocked. Jake stood slowly, legs shaking, and faced the elder. "I followed your rules," he said. "Your task is done." The elder stepped forward, her face stern. "You used tricks," she said, "not strength." Jake met her gaze. "I used human strength, our minds." Before the elder could respond, Varka stepped forward. "He passed the task," she said loudly. "The rite does not say how the stone must be moved." Her voice rang with power, and the other giantesses began to nod, some even clapping. The elder grunted, tapping her staff on the ground. Then, "The task is complete," she said, "but his duty is not over." Jake blinked. "What now?" "The next trial," the elder said. "The trial of loyalty." The crowd quieted again. Jake's chest sank. Another trial? He had just nearly broken his back rolling a mountain, but Varka looked at him and said gently, "You impressed them." He looked up, exhausted but determined. "Well, that's something," he said, smiling weakly. "Then let's see what the next duty looks like." And in the shadows of the cliffs, something watched with interest. Jake had just passed a test no one expected him to survive, but now, his heart and his choices would be tested next. The sun was high over the cliffs of the giant tribe's village. Jake sat near a fire pit, trying to stretch his sore arms and aching back. His body was still recovering from pushing that monster-sized boulder. Every muscle screamed, but his mind was already on what came next. The giants had watched him with new eyes after the trial, not as a weak outsider, but as something strange. And possibly dangerous, not because of his strength but because of his thinking. That scared them more. Varka stood nearby, arms crossed over her chest, her face unreadable. She hadn't spoken much since he passed the task of strength. Jake couldn't tell if she was proud, confused, or just watching him like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Then came the sound of horns again. The trial of loyalty was about to begin. The elder giantess returned, flanked by 2 guards. She held a scroll made of thick bark and unrolled it before the crowd. The trial of loyalty, she said, is not about muscle. Jake raised his eyebrows. Oh, thank God, the elder continued without emotion. It is about honor, about protection, about risk. Varka turned to Jake and spoke softly. This one is serious. More serious than the first one? He asked. Yes, she replied, because this time someone wants to kill you. Jake blinked, then laughed awkwardly. Wait, was that a joke? Varka didn't laugh. His smile vanished. From the other side of the village, a new group entered. They were giants too, but rougher, darker, and covered in sharp metal armor. Their leader had 3 scars across her face and a cruel smile. These are the Flame Sisters, Varka said. A rival clan. Jake looked at them, then at her. Why are they here? They challenge your loyalty, she said. They want to see if you'll stay with us, or run. The elder spoke, loudly. You will stand alone in the circle of stone. If you flee, you break the vow. If you fight, you prove loyalty. Jake's heart dropped. Wait, fight? Fight them? The elder nodded once. You may choose your weapon, she added, as if that made anything better. The circle of stone was a giant arena, with smooth walls and a dirt floor. Jake stood in the center, his legs shaking slightly. The Flame Sister warrior stepped in. Holding a double-bladed axe the size of a small car, Jake had chosen a spear. Or rather, a stick that looked like a spear. He couldn't swing anything bigger. He wasn't strong enough, but maybe he didn't need to be. The drums began again, slow and deep. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. The warrior rushed forward with a roar. Axe raised, Jake dodged. To the side, barely missing the blade. Dust exploded from the ground where the axe hit. Jake didn't try to fight back directly. Instead, he ran, rolled, dodged, staying just out of reach. The crowd began to murmur, some confused, others amused. To them, it looked like cowardice. But Jake had noticed something. The Flame Sisters' weapon was heavy. Too heavy. She got slower with each swing. Her anger was growing and her aim was getting worse. Jake ran behind one of the stone pillars, breathing hard. Then he saw it. A coil of vine rope left by the arena wall. His eyes lit up. He grabbed it quickly and formed a loop. He waited, hiding. When the Flame Sister charged again, he ran, leading her exactly where he wanted. At the last second, he slid under her, tossing the rope toward her legs. She tripped, lost balance, and fell with a giant crash. The arena shook, dust filled the air. When it cleared, the warrior lay face first in the dirt. Groaning, Jake stood above her, holding the rope. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers and laughter. Varka stepped forward, her eyes wide. The elder raised her staff. The human did not break the vow, she said. He fought in his way, and won. Jake dropped the rope, breathing heavily. I'm still alive, he whispered to himself. I'll count that as a win. Varka approached him, this time with a faint smile. You tricked her, she said, almost impressed. I improvised. Jake replied, That's what we humans do. The elder looked at him carefully. You passed the second trial, she said. But you're not done yet. Jake groaned. Of course not. Varka looked at him more closely now. You are not strong in body, she said. But your spirit moves like wind, unseen, but powerful. Jake met her eyes, unsure what to say. She turned and walked away, her long hair brushing the ground like silver fire. As the sun began to set, Jake sat again by the fire pit. He had survived 2 trials by thinking, not fighting. But the tribe was still watching, still waiting. He was beginning to understand them. But he wasn't sure he understood her, Varka, the giantess who claimed him, who now looked at him not just as a duty but as something more. The wind howled through the mountain village that night. Cold air rolled across the stone paths, but Jake felt heat rising from the fire pit in front of him. He sat on a carved bench, staring into the flames. His arms still ached, and his legs were sore. But that wasn't what bothered him. It was the silence. Not from the giants. They were talking, laughing, some even dancing after the trials. No, it was her silence. Varka, the giantess who had brought him here, stood apart from the crowd, watching him without saying a word. He had passed 2 trials. Strength by clever thinking. Loyalty by not running away. But now, something deeper was settling around him, something heavier than any task. Earlier that evening, the elder had spoken again. By our law, she had said, he who passes 2 trials is no longer just a guest, he is bonded. The tribe cheered, and the drum started again. But Jake didn't cheer. He sat still, feeling something twist in his stomach. He hadn't agreed to this, hadn't chosen. It had started with one silly compliment, and now, he was hers. Bonded? He had asked quietly. Varka had nodded. It means you are now connected to me, as partner, as protector, as chosen. Jake had laughed nervously. That sounds permanent. It is, she had replied simply. Now, hours later, he still sat by the fire trying to understand what that meant. He hadn't planned to stay. He had a ship back on the other side of the planet, a mission, a home. But now, the tribe treated him like one of their own. Worse, like he belonged to her. Varka finally approached, her heavy steps quiet but firm. She sat beside him, the bench creaking under her weight. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled between them. You don't look happy, she said at last. Jake sighed. I don't know how to feel. You passed both trials, she said. You earned your place. Did I? He muttered. Or did I just survive by accident? Varka tilted her head, her silver hair falling over one shoulder. You showed cleverness, loyalty, and courage, she said. Those are no accidents. Jake looked up at her. But I didn't choose this, Varka, he said. I didn't know what I was getting into when I said you were strong. You meant it, she said. I saw it in your eyes. Yes, but back on Earth, a compliment doesn't mean you're ready for marriage, he replied, half laughing. Varka's eyes darkened. We are not Earth, she said firmly. Silence settled again, thick and uncomfortable. Jake stood up, walking a few steps away. He stared at the sky, filled with unfamiliar stars. This was supposed to be a short survey mission, he said. Not a life-changing event. Varka stood too, crossing her arms. I did not plan for this either, she said. But you came, you spoke, you stayed, and now the bond is real. Jake turned to her, frustration in his voice. Can't we just break the bond? Varka's expression hardened. To break a bond after it is formed is shameful, she said. It dishonors both. Jake opened his mouth to argue but stopped. The way she said it, like it wasn't just a rule, but a deep wound, made him pause. He looked at her again, really looked. Beneath all the strength and size, she had risked something too. She had trusted him, even when he was small, strange, and different. And now, he was pushing her away. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said softly. Varka's face softened. A little. You confuse me, she said. You are not like the others I have known. Jake took a deep breath. Maybe we just need to understand each other better, he said. Varka looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Come, she said. There is something I want to show you. They walked together through the quiet village, the firelight, casting long shadows on the walls. She led him to a cave at the edge of the cliffs. Inside, glowing crystals lit up the walls in soft green light. Carvings covered the stone, ancient scenes of giants fighting, surviving, loving. This is our hall of memory, she said. Every bond formed, every trial passed, is written here. Jake ran his fingers along one of the carvings. A small figure stood beside a giantess, hand in hand. "Who's this?" he asked. Varka smiled. "The first bond between a giant and a human long ago." Jake stared at the image, silent. Maybe this wasn't so new after all. Maybe it was just rare, and rare things were hard to understand. He turned to her. "I'm still confused," he said. "Still unsure." Varka nodded. "So am I." They stood there, together but apart, bound by words neither fully understood. But something was changing, something quiet and deep. The unwanted bond was starting to feel less unwanted. The wind carried the scent of smoke and metal across the mountain cliffs. Jake stood beside Varka near the edge of the village wall, looking down at the valley below. What had been a quiet evening turned into a tense night. From the shadows of the eastern ridge, torches burned like angry eyes in the dark. "Who are they?" Jake asked, his voice low. Varka didn't blink. "The Broken Fang clan," she said. "They were exiled generations ago." Jake could see them clearly now. Giant warriors wearing cracked armor, red markings on their faces, and weapons that looked like they were built for war. They moved with discipline, climbing the rocks like trained beasts. They weren't just here to visit, they were here to destroy. The elder giantess shouted from the main tower, "All warriors prepare," but then her eyes turned to Jake. And the bonded one, his loyalty must now be proven. Jake's stomach dropped. "Wait now?" Varka nodded, her face unreadable. "This is the final trial," she said, "to fight beside the one you are bonded to." Jake looked back at the approaching enemy. They were huge, savage, and clearly experienced in battle. He had no armor, no real training, and no backup from Earth, but deep inside a fire sparked. "I didn't come here to be anyone's hero," he said. "But I'm also not running." Moments later, drums began to pound through the air. The warriors of Varka's tribe roared in unison, forming a line at the gate. Varka grabbed her war mace from a stone rack and looked down at Jake. "You stay behind me," she said. Jake picked up a small spear and grinned nervously. "I'll try not to die." The gates opened, and the tribe stormed forward like a flood of stone and fire. Jake ran with them, his heart racing. The two clans collided with a deafening crash. Varka was like a force of nature. Her mace smashed through enemy lines, her roars shaking the cliffs. Jake stayed close, ducking, dodging, using quick stabs to distract enemy warriors. He wasn't powerful, but he was fast and clever. At one point, a Broken Fang soldier tried to flank Varka from the side. Jake saw it first. He shouted and threw, his spear hitting the enemy's leg. The warrior stumbled, and Varka finished him with one brutal swing. "You saved me," she said, surprised. Jake panted. "I wasn't going to let you fall, not after everything." But the battle wasn't over. In the middle of the chaos, the Broken Fang leader, taller than Varka, his armor spiked and blackened, charged through the crowd toward Jake. He raised a massive blade and aimed directly. For the small human, Varka screamed and rushed forward, but she was too far. Jake stood frozen, the blade rushing toward him. But instead of running, he dove to the side at the last second. The leader's sword struck the ground, missing him by inches. Jake rolled under a fallen cart, grabbed a piece of burning wood and hurled it into the leader's face. The giant roared, his vision blinded. That was all Varka needed. She leapt forward, slamming her mace into his chest, sending him flying backward into the rocks. Silence fell over the battlefield. The Broken Fang warriors hesitated, then began to retreat. Their leader groaned on the ground, unmoving. Jake stood there, breathing hard, covered in dust and bruises. Varka ran to him, grabbing him by the shoulders. "You're insane," she said. "But you're mine." The tribe gathered around them, cheering, chanting his name. The elder stepped forward and raised her staff high. "The final trial is complete," she said. "He has proven loyalty not just in words but in blood." Jake looked around at the sea of giant warriors, then up at Varka. His heart was pounding, but not from fear. Something else was happening now, something quiet and deep. He had saved her. She had fought for him. And together, they had stood against something far bigger than themselves. Varka leaned closer, her voice soft. You could have run, she whispered. Jake nodded. I could have, he said. But I didn't want to. She looked into his eyes, the golden glow in hers flickering like a flame. You are not like the others, she said. Jake smiled. Neither are you. That night, as the tribe celebrated their victory, Jake sat by the fire, no longer just a stranger or a bonded outsider. He was something else now. Respected, accepted, trusted. And as he watched Varka from across the flames, he realized something. This bond, once unwanted, once forced, was now something he wasn't sure he could let go. The sky was calm, painted with soft purple clouds drifting across the peaks. The battle was over, the smoke had cleared, and the valley below lay silent. Jake stood at the edge of the cliffs with Varka beside him. The wind carried the scent of ash, herbs, and mountain flowers. Down in the village, the tribe was rebuilding what had been damaged. The flames were gone, but the marks of war still showed, broken walls, cracked stone, torn banners. But above all that, the tribe now looked at Jake with new eyes, not as an outsider, not even as a small one, but as one of them. Still, Jake's heart was heavy. His ship, his only way off this planet, had just been repaired by a team of traveling engineers. It sat on a flat rock clearing far away, glowing with soft blue lights, ready to take him home. He had told no one yet, not even Varka. Not until now. I need to tell you something, Jake said quietly. Varka didn't speak, but he felt her golden eyes on him. I can leave, he said. My ship is working again. Silence stretched between them. Jake waited, expecting her to argue, to plead, maybe even get angry. But she didn't. She just nodded once, slowly. It was always your choice, she said softly. Jake looked down at his hands, dirty and calloused from everything he had done. Over the past days, I never planned to stay this long, he said. I came here to explore, to take samples, to go home. And now? She asked. He turned to her. Now, I don't know where home is. Varka's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. He had seen that flicker before, when she'd first picked him up in the canyon, when he saved her during the battle, and when he stood beside her in the firelight. She didn't speak of feelings the way humans did, but her silence said more than words. Jake took a deep breath. There's something else, he said. Before I go, I need to fulfill one last thing. Varka turned fully toward him, her armor creaking softly. The final duty, she said, not as a question, but as a truth. The elder had spoken of it after the battle, whispered in private behind thick stone walls. Those who are bonded must perform the final duty, she had said, to prove not to the tribe but to each other that the bond is real. Jake didn't understand what it meant at first. He thought the battles, the trials, the sacrifice, that was enough. But now, standing beside Varka, he began to feel it. This duty wasn't about strength or loyalty. It was about choice. I'm scared, he admitted. Because if I stay, I don't know what life will look like. And if you leave? Varka asked. Jake looked at her. Then I'll always wonder what could have been. A warm breeze passed between them, rustling the grass beneath their feet. In the distance, the tribe sang songs of victory. But here, high on the cliff, the only sound was two hearts, one human, one giant, trying to understand each other. Jake walked to a nearby stone and sat down, looking out over the mountains. I used to think loyalty was just about staying when things got hard, he said. But maybe it's more than that. Varka sat beside him, folding her legs beneath. Her loyalty, she said, is choosing someone again and again even when you are free to walk away. He turned to her, surprised. Where'd you learn that? Varka smiled faintly. From you. Jake stared at her for a moment, then slowly reached for her hand. His hand was small compared to hers, but when she took it, it felt complete. Not because they were the same, but because they had earned the right to hold each other. I don't know how this works, he said. Two people, two different worlds. We learn, she replied. Together. He squeezed her hand gently. "Then I guess the final duty is simple," he said. "I stay." Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since he'd known her, her lips trembled. "You would stay? For me?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. Jake smiled. "No," he said. "I stay with you." From behind them, the elder watched quietly, then turned and walked away. No ceremony, no speech. The final duty was done, not in battle, but in choice that night. Under the stars of a strange world, Jake sat by the fire with Varka beside him. The tribe gathered slowly, one by one, sitting in a circle. Stories were told, laughter filled the air, and food passed from hand to hand. Even Jake's name was added to a new song, sung in the deep voices of warriors. He wasn't just bonded, he was home.